our Neighborhood Services and Education Committee. And we will begin with roll call.
Councilmember Cohen.
Here.
Councilmember Esparza.
Here.
Councilmember Arenas.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We don't have anything under review of work plan, and so we're going to move into.
Councilman, we do have one item. We do have a deferral of the rent stabilization program to the June 9th.
Oh, okay. You know, I printed this last night, and I don't know why I don't have it. So thank you for letting me know. So we have an item, which is the deferral of the rental stabilization plan. Is that what you said?
Correct. Yeah, the deferral of the rent stabilization program strategic plan report, and that will be deferred. The recommendation is to defer that to June 9th of this year.
Great. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to defer to June 9th this year.
Second.
Great. Could you call roll, Ruth, please?
Cohen.
Aye.
Esparza.
Yes.
Arenas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, we did have a hand up from a member of the public to speak on that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Let's hear the public, and then we will reconsider that vote.
Blair Beekman.
All right, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Sorry, having a difficult start to the meeting today, but that's okay. It'll work out, and thanks for noticing my hand. I just quickly wanted to offer with this rent stabilization issues, good luck in June. We'll be talking more about continuing tenant protections in the era of COVID and what that will entail. And it's interesting work that I feel can invite all parts of the community, no matter your background, to care about tenants' rights issues in this era of COVID. I think can invite all parts of the community, which is an interesting concept that I just feel I need to bring out at this time so people can feel invited and included to the process, all parts of the community. So good luck with this item and what we can do with it in June, and good luck in continuing tenant protection ideas. Thank you.
Wonderful. Would anyone like to reconsider their vote?
No, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. We're going to move forward onto the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent
I don't think
calendar.
there's anything on consent.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what printed item I have. Can you tell me what the next item is then, please?
Yeah, Councilor, the next item after consent is we have the reports to the committee, with the first one being public.
Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you so much. I apologize. I don't know why what I printed out is so not aligned with what we're doing. Okay, so we have yes, we spoke about this. This is the Public Life in San Jose annual report, and I believe we have our Parks and Recreation folks that will present today. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Adams-Hapner, and I'm the Director of the Office of Cultural Affairs. And I'm going to be presenting on this item with my colleagues in PRNS, Ed Solis and Avi Yodom. And we're going to provide you an update on the Public Life Enterprise Priority, which is sponsored by Deputy City Manager Angel Rios. So the City Manager's Office has 8 city enterprise priorities that serve as focal points across different departments and services. So amongst these priorities is public life. So I'm going to ask my colleague Avi to share our PowerPoint. Thank you. And then Avi, if you could just, thank you, perfect. You got it on the right slide. So I'm going to just summarize how we're defining this enterprise priority. It's safe, vibrant, and inclusive neighborhoods and public life The diverse mosaic of people who live, work, and learn and play in San Jose deserve vibrant, beautiful, accessible, safe, and inclusive public spaces that inspire friendship and connection across generations, cultures, and points of view. So our public life initiatives are coordinated by multiple departments, because you can see there's a lot in this definition. That we also work very closely with our community partners to really ensure that everybody in our community has access to lively public spaces and places that are inspirational, really. And so the mission of our public life is to enhance the service delivery through placemaking and public spaces. So a public life strategy allows residents to define the character of a city and really build civic pride and encourage greater connection socially and with San Jose. So placemaking commonly conjures what we would describe as intentional creating creative quality places and experiences for people to connect, not only with themselves, but to connect with their family and friends, but also to connect to San Jose. So today we're going to give you an update on our work over the past year and also give you a preview for what's to come. And over the past year, this past year, I would really define in terms of headlines that this was about reopening, right? Because we were returning from shelter in place, and it was really a return from social isolation. And I just want to underscore that, because that whole notion of over social cohesion and community well-being and healing, I think, is very important. And that's a really important element of what we offer. So as we welcome back events and outdoor gatherings, one of the things I'm really excited to share is that there's a pent-up demand and interest in outdoor special events. And so our event organizers are really submitting applications to activate public space across the city. So in the Office of Cultural Affairs, within our special events team, we have a new phrase. We're calling it the Roaring 22s. So because we are almost at pre-pandemic levels. So just to give you some context, in fiscal year 18-19, before the pandemic, we had collectively about 3.3 special event attendees between the PRNS Park Special Use section, as well as our special events section, which authorizes outdoor events. So our Office of Cultural Affairs is in June, we have 20 outdoor events that we're helping to facilitate. So and with 30 days in the month, I mean, that's a lot of events. We're very excited about it too. And I just want to make a quick distinction between our two offices and, what each of us do. So the Office of Cultural Affairs authorizes events in our paseos, as well as in if there's an event that is maybe a little bit more complex and requires 3 or more permits. And then Parks is really focusing on parks, and you're going to hear more about that from Ed and Avi. But I just want to really reiterate that we work really hard to collaborate and to really bring out best practices so that we can have really good customer service across the city. So in terms of outdoor events, there's some that I want to just mention that are really fun and new, and they're going to be returning again this year. So for example, Culture Night Market is one that is, if you could just go back real quick, Avi. So Culture Night Market is produced by an external event organizer, and it really profiles culture and small businesses, and it has local creative entrepreneurs as vendors, live music and entertainment, and things like great food tastings, food trucks, and they've had it at Eastridge Mall, Coronado Avenue, and also Oak Ridge Mall, with a lot of interest in expanding to new locations. So I just wanted to highlight some of the kind of new types of events we're seeing in San Jose pop up that make us excited. Thank you. Next slide. We're also going to be welcoming back City Dance. So after a 2020 hiatus, the OCA produced the 21 City Dance series with a new partnership with the San Jose Museum of Art and a new location at the Circle of Palms. And this is a free event, and it features live bands and professional dance instructors to teach a new genre of dance every week, or excuse me, every month. So this past year we had it on the first Fridays during the warmer months, and we had showcased Latin dance genres, welcoming up to about 500 attendees at each event. And then we'll be returning in June of this year, again in partnership with the Museum of Art. But the Museum of Art is going to now be open on Thursday evenings. So we're going to switch to the third Thursdays of every month from June to October. And this year's genres are going to be really fun and fabulous. We're going to kick it off with salsa, and then we're going to have Bollywood, cumbia, and then K-pop. So I welcome you all to come and join us at the kickoff on the third Thursday in June. Next slide, please. And we will be again celebrating Make Music San Jose on the summer solstice. It's always on June 21st of every year. It's the longest day of the year. And Make Music Day is an international event with over 1,000 cities around the globe that participate. So we're very excited to have welcome back our local artists and musicians. And this is a great event where anybody can participate, anywhere can become a venue. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll partner with particular sites or event producers, but then we'll invite the community to sign up. So I would welcome anyone on any site from your districts to participate, because it's a lot of fun. And I know we've done great things, for example, at Eastridge Mall. So we have a new staff member that's going to be managing this program. So she's in the process of sending out an invitation to past participants to sign up again. So I would welcome you to come out and make music with us on, I know it's a Tuesday, maybe we can do something at the city council meeting. So next slide, please. So over the past year, we completed 6 public art projects, and we have about 65 active projects underway. And probably most notably, one of the highlights was the installation of Sonic Runway at City Hall. And this is a really great example of public life and the activation of public space and offering opportunities for creative expression and connection. So we're also in the process of developing a performing arts series at Sonic Runway, and we're going to call it Experiments in Sound. And we're going to be inviting artists to come and perform the runway. Next slide. This is another project that we completed. We have over 500 locations of this is called literature. They're essentially placards on garbage cans that feature student poetry with designs by local artist Carlos Perez. Next slide. We also completed this really beautiful mural. It's called El Sueno De La Mariposa, and it's the dream of the butterfly. And it's by muralist Morgan Bricca, and it's located at the Caltrans Sound Wall at Midfield and Havana Streets in District 7. And this is just a good example of just what art can do to an underutilized space. Next slide. In the airport, we've installed some additional art and technology projects, which is the theme of the work at the airport in Terminal B. This is a work called Threshold by Phil Beasley. Next slide. And this is maybe one of my latest favorite projects. This is called A Million Times for San Jose by an artist collective called Humans Since 1982. And it is this mesmerizing clock at the airport on the lower level of Terminal B that those are a series of different clock hands, and every minute together they will form what time it is. And so I see people just mesmerized and sitting there watching it in front of the clock. Next slide, please. And finally, we're going to be welcoming back our creativity challenge in the month of October. So it's called We Create 408. And through the generous support from the Packard Foundation, we will be engaging our arts partners as well as participants across the city. And just basically every day there's going to be a new prompt asking them to integrate creativity into their everyday life. And that's really the main point of this, is that through opportunities for creative expression, you have the ability to connect with yourself, with your family and friends, and also with San Jose. So with that, oh, and by the way, with this, all of our collateral is multilingual. We communicate every prompt in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues in PRNS. So I think, Ed, we're going to kick it off to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Good morning, council members. It's nice to see you all virtually this morning. Ed Solis, Parks and Recreation. I'm very fortunate to work with an amazing team in our placemaking folks. And as Carrie said, people really wanted to get out. We were super excited at bringing Viva Parks back, which we did in September of 2001 to great acclaim. One of the things that we were worried about was, are people going to turn up with the pandemic kind of subsiding? And since then, we've had an amazing turnout. And so September of 2021 and November, we did them back to back. One of the things that we always hear from folks is that we need to do it more often. And so, back to back might have been a bit much for our team, but the public loved it. Again, we have spent lots of hours and staff time in marketing our event in the past. And this year we noticed through social media, we saved a lot of money on marketing via billboards, radio, and print. The traditional ways, we relied heavily on social media, kind of an experiment. And we found out that we get just as many people, if not more, through social media as opposed to traditional means. And so we were really excited to bring 6 miles of open streets to the city of San Jose in September and November 2021. And for those of you who were able to attend our May event, it was also very well received, attended, and June 16th will be our 4th for the fiscal year. Next slide, please. Viva Parks was back. It was extremely well attended as well. Our Viva Parks series, as you may or may not know, occurs in our neighborhoods and downtown, which we produced over 100 Viva Park events, both in our neighborhoods throughout the city of San Jose in every district, as well as our downtown parks, including Arena Green, which I'll speak a little bit more about, primarily focusing on Cesar Chavez, the Plaza Cesar Chavez, and St. James Park. Let's roll to the next slide, please. And so often folks are confused a little bit about the Abierto moniker, the tag. Abierto is the funding stream from the mayor's office that was used with relief funds, and Abierto actually funds everything from placemaking to our arts grant. And so some folks kind of look at Abierto as the $1.4 million that we carved out to fund smaller and local arts agencies throughout the city of San Jose, of which 55 small-based organizations were able to receive grants from $5,000 to $50,000. When we first began to discuss the mechanism of disseminating the information, I was extremely lucky to visit Copenhagen a few years back. And I remember distinctively one of the gentlemen who did these smaller grants was, we make it as easy as you can. It's one page, to which, my mind started to spin a little bit. And I always remembered that. I remembered how effective they seem to be and how many people they seem to reach. And so this was a great opportunity for us to partner not only with some of our bigger lead agencies like the School of Arts and Culture, Philco, San Jose Jazz, and the Downtown Association to be pass-throughs for this funding. But we were also able to create a very short one-page application that also threw some people for a loop. They were used to many layers. And so we were effectively able to get this money out, spread out throughout the city. Like I said, our 4 lead agencies did an amazing job in taking and working with these smaller activators to make sure that we did things the right way as far as permitting where it's necessary and following all city ordinances. And it was just an amazing experience. We really had a great time. And so we're looking forward to rolling this program out again this following fiscal year. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, part of the Abierto funding did have some new activations that we were excited to partner with Jason and the Guadalupe Conservancy. We did 6 different activations at Arena Green specifically for the area to bring awareness to not only the work of the Conservancy, but also to activate Arena Green like a traditional Viva Parks. And so very well received and well attended. And again, kind of new activation space for the placemaking team. Next slide, please. And the Tully Night Market. Thank you, Councilmember Esparza and her D8 team, who really pushed hard for this. We worked with Philco to create 8 individual Tully Night Markets, working with our friends at the library. Big shout out to our staff and our parks maintenance crew who helped keep the area extremely well kept. There was a lot of folks who came out with 20 different vendors each time, music, crafts, fairs. It was just a really amazing activation. Staff and folks alike were extremely pleased. It just seemed to go off, knock on wood, without a hitch. People really enjoyed it, and again, activating a space that traditionally has not been activated in the past was a great addition to what we do. And with that, I will turn it over to Avi to talk a little bit about SPU.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Avi Oksam, Deputy Director of the Parks Division. And I've got the pleasure of talking about the Special Park Use Unit, as Carrie mentioned earlier on. It is our team in the Parks Recreation Neighborhood Services Department that reviews and approves permits for special events in parks and trails, enabling safe and fun community building all across the city. And the reason we wanted to incorporate it into this presentation this morning is, first and foremost, it is part of our public life efforts in the city, making sure that we have represent the full gamut. And I'm sorry, I understand my audio is a little bit fuzzy, so I'll do my best. But also, I wanted to share with the committee our plans in the department to merge our placemaking team under the leadership of Ed Solis and our special park use unit. As we looked at it, we had 2 groups of events coordinators, one producing events like Viva Parks and Viva Kayaks, and one reviewing, coordinating, and approving events all across the city. And we saw a great opportunity to bring these 2 groups together and create a center of excellence under one vision for public life, where parks are truly actualized as hubs for public life. With that, I wanted to take a look forward. While the COVID-19 pandemic has caused significant community and economic impacts to San Jose's public life aspirations, the public life interdepartmental team has risen to the challenge in the past year to reopen public life through inspirational and healthy events and art. Looking to next year, the Public Life Interdepartmental team is seeking a second year of American Rescue Plan Act funding as part of the proposed budget to support the city's outdoor special events, Abierto activations, and grants for arts and culture. And speaking specifically for the PRNS team, we're thrilled that this proposed budget recommends ongoing funding for the placemaking team at a service level of 100 Viva Parks and 3 Viva Kayaks each year. And as Ed mentioned, next year also includes another $1.2 million in funding for Abierto grants. So we hope to see everybody at June 12th at the Viva Kayak event. With that, we recommend the committee approve this report, and we are available for feedback and questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We are going to go to our public comment.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Beekman here. For this item, I'm interested in how the concept of how we can bring people around from the Bay Area to the future of San Jose. We don't have to focus so much on traveling, long distance traveling, but local people. How do we get local people to want to come to San Jose? I'm about to enter the bus right now. Sorry about that. So It's with that, thank you. It's with that that I also wanted to add the importance of accountability and open public policy practices with technology. That I think if we do that well, that's an incentive for people to want to come to San Jose and see what exactly this data collection is about and what is the ideas of civil protections and civil rights as how to define innovation in our future. If I think that's an interesting enticement for people, and if they see that and they want to come here and see that, that's what can help develop our better practices, our better future, and it'll bring interesting people, basically, who want to build an interesting future. So thanks for your time and for my comments on this item.
Back to the committee.
Wonderful. Thank you. I am back online and thank you everyone for your patience. Wonderful presentation. We're going to start with Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you. Thank you. Great presentation. I just wanted to make a few comments first on the mural at Mariposa Park, the mural or El Sueño de la Mariposa that the OCA worked with the community and to get design ideas. And as you can see, the result is incredibly beautiful and actually inspired the community to name the park Mariposa Park. And so they're everybody is rightly incredibly proud of it. I also wanted to thank PRNS for the Tully night market. We had well over 2,000 people attend. I was personally there every week, and you could see people drive down Tully Road and literally just like pull over because they couldn't believe it was there and they were so excited. And people coming in on their bikes, bringing their dogs. People came from Santee because there were enough free things to do there. The Viva Parks staff was also there with some activities and lights so that kids could play. We offered free ice cream. And so people came for the fun and also people came to buy because the vendors were full every week. And so to me, I just wanted to thank everybody. It was an outstanding example of the kind of partnership that really, I think the community has been longing for. It's just people couldn't believe it when they saw it. And so it was hugely successful, and hopefully we can do it another year. And then I'm told it can be self-sustaining, which is great. So it was really amazing to see. And I also wanted to thank the Viva Parks team. So as we were kind of going back and forth from different COVID restrictions, they were loosening up, they were tightening up, loosening up, tightening up. Those Viva Parks park activations were incredibly important, again, to have free, safe activities for families to come, and they came. That's the other thing, is people came. They want this kind of life. And one of the things that sticks with me is in the Viva Park activations in District 7, we had them in very low income communities. And the Viva Parks came out, the staff came out, they engaged everyone, and we had really cool activities. That rock climbing wall was pretty amazing. But one of the things that stuck with me was the kids playing in a playground because it was clean, because it was safe, because there were a lot of adults around, and they just wanted to play. And they wanted to play in a space that wasn't always kept that clean and that safe and had a lot of people watching around. And it was pretty amazing to see. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for that, because the neighborhoods really saw the city coming to them. And it made a huge impact with the kids and the families. With that, I'll move to accept the report. Thanks.
I'll second.
Great. Councilmember Cohen.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the staff for the presentation and for all the work activating our public spaces and providing activities for people. I think people are certainly looking for outdoor things to do. So all these outdoor activities are really adding to the vibrancy of San Jose. And as we saw this week, despite the issues that we're still dealing with as a city, there was that ranking that said San Jose is the 5th best city in the world to live in. And it's because of activities like this and the opportunities that the city provides for people to gather and enjoy our outdoor spaces in a place with perfect weather that people still do enjoy living here. So I just want to thank the team for all of these, for everything they're doing for the city.
Thank you, Councilmember Cohen, and thank you, Councilmember Esparza. We appreciate that.
Wonderful. I actually just wanted to also tag on to the gratitude. I am so excited that Viva Calles is finally going to be permanent, and it's going to be part and parcel of the city of San Jose, and it's forming its identity, right? So we are really opening up our streets. We're opening up our parks, like as you've heard, our council members and our nightlife in non-traditional places. And so that sounds just really amazing. But I know it was a lot of work to get there. So congratulations, John and Avi and Ed. You have been a staunch supporter and held it together for us when we didn't have the funding. And so one of the questions I have is, how are you, I know that you're switching in terms of how you're pulling people in, but I hope that you're not pulling back so much that we're not doing some, paper notices, because there's still, that portion of our community that relies on it. How are we going to balance that?
Thank you, Councilmember. That's an excellent question. And so one of the, I want to say one of the biggest reasons that we are successful is that we still canvass. We still go door to door, business to business, not only for Viva Parks and Viva Calles, but anything that we do. We have our mailers that go out. We have all languages covered. And so we do the traditional, getting the information out through our council offices. We do have our website. We actually have an app for that. But like I said, we have to get out there and meet the people where they're at. And so we send our bilingual staff out and we answer the questions. We let folks know what's coming their way and what to expect. And like I said, with our Viva Parks series coming up, we hold community meetings within those council districts just to let people know about what's going on. We hand out calendars on that day. We do have rack cards. We do some of the traditional stuff, especially around like things that are series like Viva Parks and Viva Calles. So it still does exist, but like I said, we with the popularity of Viva Calles and to Mr. Beekman's point, we have data that shows that people come from all around the Bay, from Soledad all the way up to Santa Rosa. And our partners at MTI, Dr. Philbrick, they do a great job of helping us gather this data so that we can show the impact not only to businesses and neighborhoods, but also where we're bringing people from. By and large, folks are from San Jose, but we do attract folks from all around. But yeah, canvassing is a big part of what we do.
Great. And I hope that we can continue to have a Title I school, or the communities that surround Title I schools, be the target of some of that canvassing. I think that's really important. You'll see that. I know you're shaking your head because this community. We know this community from, it hasn't changed from 25 years ago. It continues to be the same. They like to post things up on their fridge. They like to have something in hand to let them know of what's coming up that just works for them. And they also like on-site registration and on-site activities, right? That's why Eastridge Mall has done so well, because they have a public, they have a customer base, and that's the kind that likes to walk into a store and not necessarily go online. And so we know our customers, and I think it's great that people are coming from all kinds of different places, but it would be a shame that our own residents from our most underserved communities don't make it out there. And so the next question I have for you is, how are we integrating? Because one of the things that you talk about Copenhagen, but I was thinking about Guadalajara and how it is based on volunteers. When will we shift this, or will we begin to fold in some of our residents to be some of those concrete volunteers? Because Guadalajara doesn't even have police officers, as you know, right? If we could get to that point, I think it would be truly, truly grassroots.
Yes, and that's another great question, and absolutely, I agree with you regarding volunteers. And so currently we need approximately 200 250 volunteers per event. 6 miles of city streets is a massive undertaking, and so we have to look at not only crossing points, but areas that are affected, our hubs, and so we do staff it with city staff, but we rely heavily on San Jose State students, and so we tap into those folks. One of the things that we have as a barrier, council members, up till now, it's always been 1 year at a time, and so having something that's more scheduled and that's going to be regular, I think, is going to help us in recruiting a solid volunteer base that knows what to expect year after year. And so having the frequency, having the funding, I think, is going to help us establish that that level of volunteerism. And I think that in the future will help us cut down on staffing and relying on people who believe and love in open streets programs and what they do and what they deliver for our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that does take a lot of work. I mean, just we have our annual event, and of course we only have 4 or 5 people in our office compared to other offices or departments, and it just it can break an office when you're dealing with policy at the same time and a weekly council meeting. So I hope that could get structurally alleviated for our staff, because there's still so much to do so that we can grow, right? And we can take it into Viva Calles 2.0, where there is, a different level of involvement from our community that's really integrated in a way that they own this event just as much as we do. How are you thinking? Because I was thinking when you were presenting, and there was a little talk about, the businesses getting into involved in the late night market. How will we use, or is there any plans to use the Promotoras program to get some of those businesses ready and involved? Because a lot of the times I know it takes a lot of time to connect with those businesses, especially the ones that are struggling. They don't have time for a call. They don't have time. They're just hands-on. So how is there a plan to cross over, or maybe have your own group of promotores to get the businesses ready for that route?
Yes, absolutely. And that is, you bring up another good point. Speaking of little teams, before this year, it was a few of us covering a lot of mileage. And so one of the things that we look at, council member, in regards to the impacts of open streets, businesses are highly affected, mostly positively, but also every once in a while, we do get the, hey, I didn't know about this, or I wasn't prepared. And so just the sheer amount of businesses that we impact will call for the need for promotoras, people to get out there and help us spread the word, not to be too invasive into our local and smaller businesses, but really just to let people know, what they can expect. And part of the regularity and part of the benefit it's going to bring is that people will know what to expect a year or two in advance. Like I said, with hopefully with the passing of the general fund, we'll know, hey, we got 3 years, we can plan out routes and logistics years in advance. It also helps with retainability for our team, right? We've had some amazing staff members who are passionate. They do such amazing things, but this is a tough time economically for everyone. And so having the ability to promote themselves into a permanent position is always something that we encourage all of our staff, but hitting that reset button every year was difficult. One of the things that we really do emphasize is the impact to businesses. We do our best to create relationships with everybody from the Alum Rock, Association, Japantown are massive fans, SOFA. So we have these connections. Again, going back to having the regularity, I think we're going to be able to establish that permanent staffing and really assign somebody to that business outreach and developing the use of promotoras and everybody to help us get the word and the information out. So yeah, it's a big haul, but I think we're on the right track.
Wonderful. Well, lastly, I just like to suggest District 8 once again as part of the route. We'd love to see it out here as well. We sometimes feel disconnected from the rest of the city, but love to see Viva Calles come out again.
Absolutely, Councilmember. I got 2 words: hills.
No, there's
I know that's what word it is.
There's a lot of flat land. I'm not telling you to do it at Silver Creek Valley Road for sure. That's like a roller coaster instead of Viva Calles. But there's, we did it once and I think it was really awesome. I'd love to see how we could begin to connect Lake Cunningham to the rest of the folks, because I think it's a very, residents who live around there know it and love it, but I think that there's still an opportunity for others to visit a body of water, even if they can't dip their toe into it. But nature is 15 minutes away. All right, so let's have a roll call for vote.
Cohen,
Aye.
Esparza,
Yes.
Arenas.
Yes.
That passes. Thank you.
Thank you. That passes
Thank you.
unanimously.
Have a nice rest of your morning.
Thank you. All right, so next is item D2, which is Parks Funding Initiative Status Report. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council Member. I'll be taking the lead here and I'll be showing our presentation shortly as soon as I can get that up and running. All right, there we go. Okay. Well, good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Dave DeLong. I'm the Division Manager in Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services of our Administrative Services Division. And I'm joined by Michelle McGurk of the City Manager's Office. And we're here today to discuss our recent efforts to pursue a Parks funding initiative. As you know, PRNS is a diverse set of programs and services and amenities that serve the needs of the people of San Jose. And as you also know, our resource capacity to rise and meet all of their priorities and expectations is not sufficient for a city of our size. Whether it's the condition and safety of our parks and trail system, the cleanliness of our city, the health and safety of our children, youth, and seniors, or administrative capacity to keep up with all the needs that lie before us, we have to think about creative funding options that will make addressing these needs sustainable in the long term, apart from the general fund support. For that reason,
and council members, I'm Michelle McGurk, assistant to the city manager, and from the Office of Administration Policy and Intergovernmental Relations. So I just wanted to share this slide to refresh your memory about the different thresholds that we have for different types of ballot measures in the state of California. So as you can see here, when we do a bond measure, a parcel tax, or any dedicated special tax, those require 2/3 of the voters. So examples of those would be our library parcel tax, which is dedicated to the library, or our Measure T bonds that we did a few years ago, which are a general obligation bond. General taxes require a simple majority of the voters to approve. So that's 50% of the voters plus 1 vote. And examples of the general taxes that we have in the city would be, for example, the card room measure that was on the ballot a few years ago, Measure E, the real property transfer tax measure that went to the voters in 2020, and our cannabis business tax. Those are just a few things that are considered general taxes. What we did in the city manager's office in working with PRNS was we looked at every ballot measure that has been considered in the state of California in 2018, 2020, to see if there was any creative approaches. And that was really how we found and created Measure E back in spring of 2020. We look under every rock to see if there's a creative approach to funding. And what we found was there really weren't any new approaches for a general tax, which would require a simple majority. And of course, each city department, their ideal is to find something that would be dedicated to the needs, such as, the library parcel tax where it's dedicated. I should also note that we don't have any more sales tax capacity in San Jose. In our county, much of the sales tax capacity is taken up by VTA and transit needs. It would take an act of the legislature to increase the sales tax threshold, which is something that has happened in Southern California. So with that, what we did is we created 4 versions of measures to poll. This was, as we had talked about with this committee several times in the past, we did a parcel tax measure that was based on square footage. It would have, it was 1 cent per square foot. We looked at 4 different versions of it. 2 were park specific with different types of ballot language. And 1 was more neighborhoods focused that included Beautify SJ, homelessness, and streets and sidewalks and trees. And then the final was really around clean creeks and other efforts that we looked at. So I'm going to turn it back to Dave to sort of tell you what happened when we went out in the field in January.
Well, thanks, Michelle. As Michelle mentioned, for this round of polling, the city opted to work with a consultant, or we did work with a consultant to test a parcel tax. Starting in January of this year, with a view towards a June ballot measure, individual property tax holders were asked about their willingness to pay annual parcel tax that amounted to either $38 or $75 per year to fund ongoing revenue for parks, recreation, and neighborhood services. In asking this, we noted that the revenues generated would amount to about $25 million, $49 million per year, respectively. And that compared to our prior efforts back in 2019, about $33 million or $44 million. Those were the 2 options. With that, the city also tested the community's receptivity to tax measures for clean creeks, neighborhood improvements, and Beautify SJ, as Michelle alluded to. And then we hope to see results similar to what we saw in 2019 and find some footing to make a June ballot measure feasible. We saw quickly that it wouldn't be the case. Out the gate, the polling actually showed low receptivity within the community for a new tax measure, regardless of the focus. In fact, the preliminary results were telling us that the 2/3 threshold was not likely to be reached from simply a math standpoint. For that reason, in late February, the administration decided to suspend our immediate efforts, save our polling resources, and regroup to consider our options again for a November ballot. In essence, we saw that this was clearly not the time to ask the community to reach into their pockets with so many other challenges facing them, including the key concerns that you see here. Unfortunately, given that these challenges continue and are exacerbated by the uncertainties posed by the war in Ukraine and our economy, the administration has decided that pushing the ballot measure to November will not likely result in success. So where does that leave us? For this reason, at this point in time, staff needs to regroup to consider how we might approach the future effort while still directing attention to the steps that are listed here. Basically, we'll need to continue fostering awareness about how Parks and Recreation serves the community and the value we bring to San Jose through our lines of communication. We can engage our partners to educate them and the community about what it takes to sustainably deliver on what we believe to be reasonable expectations. We need to return to the drawing board to explore creative funding options and measures that we can advance when the time is right. And then at this point, we're hoping that we can resume polling with those options in mind sometime in mid to late 2023. So with that, I'd like to conclude our presentation and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Do we have any public comment?
Blair Beekman?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Where applicable on this item, it was really nicely spoken about a few days ago by Councilperson Esparza at budget time. You know, how we talk about the future of our parks can really be important ideas of racial equity. And I know this important concept of people like Councilperson Carrasco as well. And if we learn to really have a core set of racial equity ideas that we negotiate and work on as a whole city process, I think that can invite a consistency to our future that's really interesting. And so good luck in those efforts. And I think working on parks, having, I don't know, having an equitable sense of things with park use throughout the city, maybe that's one of the common core equity values we could set forward in the future. I don't know, but it's creating that common core of equity ideas that parks may be a part of, that I hope in this item can address. That good luck on this sort of thinking in this item. Thank you.
Juan Estrada?
Dear committee members, thank you for considering ballot measures that could provide funding for parks and keeping our creeks clean. It's important to understand that you are not alone. It's equally important to remember that residents may decide whether parks and creeks deserve funding based on their current conditions. I'm Juan Estrada, and I'm with Green Foothills, which has protected open space and natural resources in Santa Clara and San Mateo counties for 60 years. Urban green space is a critically important tool for climate resilience, biodiversity, and our physical and mental health. I'll cite just a few examples: tree-lined streets in a city neighborhood, city nature preserves and community farms, creeks winding through developed areas, their riparian corridors providing habitat and connectivity for wildlife. The lack of sufficient urban green space is felt most severely in low income and communities of color, but affecting us all. Green Foothills is working hard in partnership with community leaders to expand green space in all its forms so that everyone can experience nature close to home. It's unclear what polling questions were utilized, so it's difficult to interpret why receptivity may have been low. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that you are not alone in caring about our need for parks and clean creeks. Should the city decide to pursue funding, there would likely be not only passive, but also active support from environmental organizations. Awareness and receptivity would likely increase. We may also be in a catch-22. Residents may decide whether parks and creeks deserve additional funding based on their current conditions. One example is that Lake Cunningham is an environmental equity issue that may be impacting the opinion of residents. This 58-acre open space is a vital resource for all San Jose residents. Visitors can clearly see that the water isn't safe, although I worry that kids may at times dare to touch it. It is long past time to address this water quality issue, not just for safety reasons, not just for environmental equity reasons, but to show them that the city walks the walk. Spend the $3.2 million, spend what you need to demonstrate that our parks are worthy. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
Thank you. I don't see any hand. Oh, there we go. Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you. So I get it. I mean, I think I don't think we're unusual in the climate right now regarding what people are feeling and thinking, and there's just not a lot of patience for additional taxes anywhere. I understand some school districts are also, and we live in an area that's been incredibly supportive of school parcel taxes and bonds. So I had a question. So we're going to start polling again, excuse me, in mid to late 2023. what are you looking in terms of timeline, in terms of the engagement with stakeholders with regard to the polling?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councilmember. I think that's one of the conversations that we're trying to have now. I think looking at this last polling effort, we were hoping to kind of glean where the priorities of the community lied most specifically, and then use that to kind of parlay it into a conversation with stakeholders, educating them about some of the needs that we have from a resource standpoint, and then move the needle forward with that conversation more broadly had by our stakeholders. I think that's something that we need to return to, but without kind of a gauge on where the community's mindset is with respect to our priorities, it makes it a bit challenging. So we're trying to figure that out.
Okay, but in terms of the timing, when are you looking at doing that, sort of planning that out, right? If we're going to start polling mid to late 2023, are you going to have meetings before polling starts to shape the polling?
Councilmember, there's actually a process that the city manager's office works with city departments so that we are not, in advance of the election cycle to start to plan the work and then have those conversations. So we know, this is, PRNS has been in the, looking at this. We've done multiple rounds of polling, but there are other issues. And so what we try to do is figure out where we can combine and where we can look at them. What's the map of when we could go to the voters, and then we work with the departments. 2024 will actually be potentially a better election cycle, typically a presidential election, but then we also have to look at the landscape of what school districts and other folks are doing. It's also, the planning will need to be a bit earlier if California is doing the primary in March, which has traditionally been the case for a presidential cycle. So I think the department and the city manager's office will begin having those conversations sooner rather than later, if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you. That is helpful. And it's kind of what I'm getting at, because I think this is really complex. I think most people, particularly those that are engaged civically in some way, understand that the city doesn't have the resources to do everything that we need. But beyond that, I think that we need to connect the dots a lot more with folks, because we are really in the hole, and this is desperately needed. It's been desperately needed for a long time, and I think we have an opportunity to start the messaging, frankly, with the June budget, right? Hey, we were hoping to have to be able to talk about a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe with a tax, but these are some very real limitations that we have, and we need to start messaging that with the public, because I think, as we heard earlier, people love their parks and they want more. and so I think that messaging is critical. I agree with you. I do think that the presidential election, it's noisier in terms of that's when everybody's going to be putting their measures on. But I think if we start earlier, we have a chance to break through that. I'm just sad that we couldn't get it done, although I understand all the fatigue out there and the stress. It's a weird message to say when the city and the state has a surplus, to then go to the public and say, we need this tax. And so I just think we need to connect those dots a little bit more. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing that I have any more hands, I'm going to also step in. I think that we knew that this issue existed previous to 2020, leading into 2020 polling, right? And we have a captive audience of folks who come into our services, who come into our community centers, who use ROC programs, who, you know, they're throughout all of our services. And when we want to have some behavioral modification changes, we all know that it's pretty standard to have some campaigns. And I always go back to what we all know as a huge triumph in Texas, and that's Don't Mess with Texas. And that came about because Texas was having a dumping and, you know, a public garbage issue. And that was the Department of Transportation. And if the Department of Transportation can come up with something that now defines who Texas is, and actually is now defining their culture as brassy Texans that don't mess with Texans, like, right? Don't mess with Texas. I think that we can do this at a very lower level through some of the captive audiences that we have already. And so what I would be interested in knowing is, what are your next steps? Because I know that part of what you said was to have some increased awareness about how Parks Recreation Services serves the community. I think they know how it serves the community, but I think they need to know what is the next, wouldn't you like such and such, or would you like to continue at the Viva Calles events? We have a huge audience that we can feed this information. And I don't mean feed in terms of, you know, propaganda, but really to create this level of awareness that is going to be needed to have this culture change. We're creating a culture change with Viva Calles. Now it's cemented into our administration, our core city service. It is now a core city service. And so I think it's our job to tell people that if they like these kinds of events, and if they enjoy the Viva Parks, and if they like the nightly markets, these are the kinds of things that we can continue to offer. Otherwise, they're going to be gone, right? Because we can't sustain them. And so I'm not saying that I know exactly what first step for behavior modification is, other than what I do with my own children when they're behaving badly. But I know that there's some really good research already established through public administration for us to learn. Something that we could do leading up to 2024. I think we can do it. We have a lot of events. We just have to have a concerted and a very focused and targeted message about what PRNS does. And we're the best kept secret. You guys truly are the best kept secret. I don't want it to be a secret anymore. I mean, I want us to be able to say, you know, this is who we are, and have our own slogan in terms of the kind of outdoor life and activities that we provide our residents, which is something that our residents are starting to see, right? And not only them, but people outside of our city are coming down for it. So what is our, solidly, if you could tell me like the next 3 steps you're going to take to foster that awareness, what, or in preparation of doing that?
Council member, if I could just provide a little bit of context, and then I'll turn it back over to Dave with some more specific next steps. But I want to connect kind of the dots on 2 things that both you said, but both you and Councilmember Esparza said. And I think it is going to require, this effort is going to require literally a campaign to really change the narrative and really introduce people into a different narrative. Because as you all know, based on current polling and based, it's almost like the word tax or any type of increase. There's so much anxiety amongst voters, for all various reasons, that it's almost dead on arrival, right? But when we start talking about investment in children, when we start talking about the safety of our children and youth and our seniors, and when we start to really highlight the role that parks played during the pandemic, I mean, we cannot overemphasize the role that parks played, not only the physical parks themselves, but as well as the park staff, whether it was food distribution, whether it was vaccination, whether it was, and so I do think we're going to need to spearhead a campaign. And to Councilmember Esparza's point, I think that conversation needs to start now already in terms of how we begin to do that, how we engage various stakeholders, not only those that are our traditional stakeholders and partners along with this work, but also the business sector and others, right, who also rely on good quality neighborhoods for their workforce, right, when they think of it in terms of economic development. So, we are going to need to change this narrative if we're going to be successful in 2024. So I would say that's step one. So maybe Dave and Michelle, you could come up with the other two steps, but those are.
It doesn't have to be three. I mean, I just want to know what the next phase of it looks like.
So Councilmember Arenas, I want to share my experience sort of on the flip side. As you guys know, I've straddled the administration and the political side in my career.
Right.
And I did, as a volunteer, was very involved with the renewal of the library parcel tax when I was in the mayor's office. And what was unique about that, or not unique, but what was necessary in that circumstance was having strong community leadership to lead the effort with a tax measure. And of course, I will caveat that renewals of taxes are always easier than a new tax. But there had been a history where, whether it was in that case, the Library Foundation and grassroots leaders. I mean, there were some well-known names in the community, the retired library director. And then there was support from actually MEF provided lots of volunteers who did phone banking and things like that. And so, and then the mayor himself did the fundraising at that time. So we had this whole team. Similarly, if you look back at Measure E, so all of that happens outside of City Hall. That's all community effort.
Mm-hmm.
That's once you get the pre-effort is making the community aware of the needs and understanding what the issue in the case is. And you need a lot of really strong stakeholders who are going to go from sharing that message to then leading the effort in the next phase. And that has frankly been a challenge for something like this. So I just want to share that piece of the puzzle, that there's going to need to know where community leadership comes in for, whatever a future campaign might be.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have 10 people who've managed to get themselves elected somehow. So, I think there's an opportunity to tap into that. And I'll tell you, just by coincidence, I didn't do this on purpose, but I was door knocking on the weekends on my own time for the supervisorial campaign, and lots of folks talked to me about Lake Cunningham because they're like 5 blocks away or something, or they walk to this park every day, and it wasn't, I didn't need to prompt the conversation. There is folks out there who are very much invested in our regional parks and some of the attractions that we have in San Jose that I think we can just naturally tap into, but I think it has to be coordinated. We have, obviously this election is like in, less than 25 days, but the next election is in November. And I think that there is an opportunity for folks on on off times to go with people who are campaigning to do some of that level of work and awareness. I mean, door knocking, it's just, you know, as grassroots as it can be, but that's where you really get to learn about some of the area's efforts. And I actually learned more about this particular neighborhood that I thought I knew. And I was, you know, I was amazed at how, you know, what they do for each other and the observations that they were having, and how they connect with one another. And so I'm happy to connect you with this particular group. But each one of us has, and then I have my traditional groups that, you know, are our neighborhood associations that also do a lot of advocacy. And we have them come in because they are the ones who have probably contacted us to begin with about some of those concerns. And so we are just helping them channel what they want already through an effort that may, you know, be developing or already exists. So I think the awareness begins now, and I hope that there's something that we can do. And I know that there internally, obviously, we can't campaign, but we can create that awareness about the needs, like you said, like you mentioned, right? We have to just really say boldly, we're not ever going to be able to fix the water in Lake Cunningham unless we have some additional support, right? We won't be able to provide additional Viva Calles or Viva Parks, or, you know, and I don't mean a scare tactic, but an awareness of what is it that you want and how do we get there, right? So anyways, we're not going to sort this out now, but I hear what you're saying in terms of investment of youth. I think that you've learned, you know, there's probably a lot of crosstabs there that you've picked up on in terms of what people are saying, what they're not saying to you. And so, you know, I just look forward to seeing what that next phase of it is. And Michelle, you obviously have gone through something that has already been very successful. I'd love to replicate that because, you know, this source of funding creates that level of stability that Ed was talking about. Right now, we can plan for the next phase and think bigger and think about, you know, every year without thinking that we're going to get X'd out. And I'd love to see how PRNS would unfold if we had this.
Yeah, so I want to be clear and reiterate something that Dave said earlier, and that is we don't have detailed polling data from this round because we suspended the polling. So it's not, because the numbers were not in a place where the math was going to work to get to 2/3, and we decided to save resources and continue. So we actually suspended early into the process. So we do, so because we were thinking that we would, you know, hopefully things would improve and we would be able to, you know, this was January. So we were still pretty optimistic we'd get through the current surge of cases and the economy would start to improve in the springtime. And instead, things just got successively worse. And so we realized November is not going to be viable given November of 2022 is not going to be viable. We've talked with the consultants. And so that was sort of the strategy at that point in time, was to save resources, thinking we could look ahead to November. If November had been a possibility, we would have been back at this committee in like March and talking to you about a November. But we were continually monitoring what our consultants were hearing from other cities and the polling they were doing elsewhere. And we just, you know, we had to sort of just make a determination that, you know, things were getting, I mean, once the war started in Ukraine and then the new variants came about, gas prices were going up. we realized that a revenue measure in November would be very, very challenging, particularly with a 2/3 threshold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we have homeowners that continue to purchase at least at 1 million, if not 1.2 as a baseline. So I think we have a level of property owners in San Jose that might have more expendable income than maybe other cities. I don't know that other cities have seen this kind of boom during the pandemic. We certainly have seen an exodus, but it hasn't been of homeowners. It's mainly been of renters, right? So listen, I get what your consultant is saying. I just think that we need to know enough to develop a message. It sounds like you might have learned enough there. So I'm just gonna leave it as is. We can take it offline if there's anything additional, any additional questions that I can think of. But for now, I'm gonna move over to Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you. I actually wanted to follow up on that in terms of what the climate will look like next year. We have study sessions on things that are really important to us as a city. We're going to have some new colleagues next year. And so I think this is important enough to schedule a study session for next year to really, so that there's one, not just for, our future colleagues, but in that study session that we engage partners in that presentation and that we make that as a public thing, right? And so before that, we can start to engage some meetings. I do remember that, Michelle, I wasn't here for that, but I do remember it. In terms of experience, I was very, very involved in Measure A, and which was the housing bond. And very, very early on, there were some reports that some third parties had done. So there was some statistics, some studies, some harder data, and that had happened. And then, we started engaging multiple partners, really identifying specific needs, and then really talking about some messaging. And but doing that with a couple, 2-3 dozen stakeholders. And I do think that there are some things, I agree with Councilmember Arenas. I don't think we're going to poll this year. Like I agree, let's wait. But there are some things that we can do. For example, the Sunday, right? Is it the Sunday after the election? We're going to have a huge event in our city that's going to bring out lots of folks that we're using social media for. We'll have a lot of signage, and that's Viva Calle. In the holidays, we have Christmas in the Park. And I know that that's a private endeavor, but it's really a public-private endeavor, right? It takes an enormous amount of city resources, as well as private resources, and it's beloved, right, by the community. It's beloved by the business community. And so there are steps that we can take this year to start engaging folks as they're coming out of COVID. And I understand that with all the challenges we've faced in the past 2.5 years, this isn't the top of mind for a lot of folks, but as we come out of it, I think people start seeing how important it is. We've seen how our parks have been used. We have seen how much our community wants to have that public life that we just talked about in the earlier presentation. I don't think there's a part of the city that hasn't come out strongly to support it. And so there are little ways that we can start messaging it now as we unroll, as we come out. Viva Parks is coming out this summer. There are ways that we can start messaging and start engaging folks. I don't have like a fully developed idea of what that messaging is, but, brought to you by the city's parks department. And I know that sounds super obvious, but, there are a lot of folks that don't know that. And so there are little things that we can do this year. But I do think we need to sit down with our stakeholders as they include something like this in their future planning and strategic planning. And I think we do need a study session. We need to make it very clear to the city that this is that important, and that frankly, this is that structural. We cannot, we can't continue the way we are. We just can't do it. We need to do this. And I do think that, I think when we talk about the magnitude of the problem, I think as we come out of COVID and as we come out of this, people will understand, because we have a city that, again, we're in a city and a state with a surplus at a time where there's incredible suffering and incredible fatigue, right? And so it's this weird kind of dichotomy that we're in. But I do think it's worth having those conversations now. And I do think we need a study session next year on this, and that study session engage partners. That's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I think it's a great time. Also, I'm just going to work off of those comments. I think it's a great time to also enroll people as they are coming to something that there is of interest to them, whether they, sign a petition or sign a petition of support, or sign up for something, right, to receive information in the future that we can then disseminate. I'm sure that you already collected through some of the surveys that you do, but anyways, we love PRNS. We want to be supportive. And so I know we're not going to figure it all out right now, but as you've heard, I think there's a potential here that we need to make sure that we're ready for 2024, because that's just around the corner. And we have to take advantage of it during this campaign season to be ready for the next. All right. Do we have a motion?
Do we need to accept the presentation? I thought it was just an update.
Yes, we need to accept the presentation.
Okay, I'll move to accept the presentation.
Wonderful. I'll second that. Can we call roll for a vote, please?
Cohen,
Aye.
Esparza,
Yes.
Arenas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so that leads us, that's the last item on our agenda before we go to open forum. And so members of the public are invited to speak on any item that doesn't appear on today's agenda, and that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. So anything that the City Council has oversight of, you're open to speak on. Thank you.
Mayor Beekman?
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the meeting today. It turned out to be a nice, hopeful meeting, and I needed it. So thanks. This is why this committee is such a good, hopeful, interesting committee, and it was good to hear. Good luck how we can all become involved in the future of park issues. I wanted to comment, just I guess first to thank you for your patience with myself, but I'm trying my darndest to go through a long explanation of what I've been going through with community energy reports from, way back in 2018-20 and how they're going to be affecting us in 2023. There's many ways to talk about it and understand what's going to be going on in the next year. And I'm trying my best to be patient and not alarmist about it. And it's a lot of work, and I'm not very good at it. And just thank you for your continual patience with that as I try to explain my way through my thinking of the past year and how, we have to deal with issues of basically war and the future of U.S. fracked gas at this point for 2023. So with all that said, just a reminder, the events that happened in Buffalo and I guess in California in this past weekend, I just don't think violence is the answer to solve our issues. And I hope we're working on that at the local school level. You know, we don't have to do these massive explosive things in order to solve our issues. It takes just practice of dialogue and communication. And we have about, you know, 5 or 6 practices right now in San Jose based on human rights, good ideas of racial equity, open public policies, tenants' rights, worker rights, and that kind of stuff. Everyone's invited to it.
Back to the committee.
Great. Well, that is the end of our meeting. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Have a great day.